I'm Caitlin and welcome to the Lit Review. Today we're continuing with my zodiac recommendation series where I give you some recommendations based on what I know about your zodiac sign or what little I know about your zodiac sign. Today is all about Aries. So if you were born from March 20th to April 19th, these book recommendations are for you. I mean, they could also be for anybody else, but they're specifically intended for our Aries friends. So what I like to do is I like to give like a quick rundown, an unofficial rundown, if you will. Nobody is going to be all the things ascribed to their sign, so I'm doing my best to give you a quick rundown, and then I will give you usually like 6 recommendations from stuff I've read and vetted and think is a good fit for what I know about your personality. And then there are going to be some books that come out during that time frame of March 20th to April 19th that I think could also be a good fit for an Aries, just to see if some of those recent releases also catch your eye. So let's get into it. So first and foremost, the Aries are a fire sign and they are known by their symbol of the ram. Their color is red, and I think that tells you a lot about them. One thing I will say for y'all is it feels like a lot of your positives could also be your negatives. The emotional whiplash on that must be real intense because you have things in your traits descriptions being like, you know, really courageous and passionate. Passionate nature could also get you in a little bit of trouble with your temper, maybe a little moody. You're very confident folks, which is cool to see. And again, I think that really like feeds into the competitive side of your best and worst there, because you think you've got this, and no wait, you know you've got this. Another thing I found that was kind of cool, that a lot of Aries are trailblazers. They're people who are going to forge their own path. If something's been done the same way forever, an Aries is very likely to say, not today. Y'all are also really honest and value honesty, but this can sometimes harm you because y'all are also very blunt people, like you're very direct. And so that could be a really good thing for communication, or it could be a really bad thing. It could get you in trouble. So I hope you see what I mean by like that like good and bad are often very closely related here for you Aries folks. And then some famous people. I like to give you some famous people to give you a frame of reference of whose company you're keeping. Some of the people that immediately caught my eye were some musical trailblazers and really unique people that completely changed the game in their own different ways. People like Lady Gaga, Elton John, Lil Nas X. Then you also have people like Robert Downey Jr., Maya Angelou, Emma Watson, James Patterson, and Beverly Cleary, who just passed. And then I always like to try to glean like what maybe a little bit of your 2021 overall horoscope was. And a lot of what I was seeing is that there were a lot of personal battles for you in 2020. And so the goal set for 2021 is for you to like learn lessons from those personal battles and take those lessons moving forward. That was something that kind of came up in a couple of different places when I was doing my research. So with all of that detail I just gave you, I'm going to try to recommend you some books that I've read. And then at the end we'll do some things that are on my radar that have come out in Aries season. The first of my recs is kind of a double-edged sword in that it is technically a James Patterson presents, James Patterson being an Aries. This is kind of a series that Patterson like slaps his name on, but the series itself has a lot of really original authors that are getting their debut. So Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan is one of those books. This book is actually the first time I ever noticed the James Patterson presents imprint, but honestly this book stands so far on its own, and Natasha Nyan is a really dynamic writer. In particular, I think this first book in her trilogy is the best that I've read so far. Only the first 2 books have been released, but also because y'all are fire signs, I thought this would be helpful and accurate. Our main character in this book, Lei, is a lot of things that Aries represent. She is courageous. She's deeply passionate. She has a well of inner confidence that keeps her going even when everything around her is trying to bring her down. She's also really impatient and very direct. So I think she would be a good fit for an Aries character. This book is also LGBTQIA+, which is really cool. Love to see it. Recommend this to my Aries friends if you haven't tried this already. Next up is a YA pick full of courageous, impatient, trailblazing women, and it is also LGBTQIA+, and that is The Good Luck Girls by Charlotte Nicole Davis. This is my ARC copy. I would like to get a better looking copy. It's a Western-inspired fantasy world, but the fantasy elements are kind of subtle and interwoven throughout the narrative of this whole thing. Baby, are you here to bless this video? Thank you. So our main character, Astra, is the one that we actually see her POV the most. And she is kind of the leader of this group of girls in a way. And it's a really interesting book. I know there's going to be more in the sequels, but I'm really excited to continue with the series. And then I don't have this book with me currently, but I would like to recommend to you Pride by Ibiza Boy. So this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling set in, I want to say Brooklyn, set in a neighborhood in New York where gentrification is slowly but surely happening, and our main character, Zuri, and her family have lived on her block her whole life, and it is her home base. It is her source of truth, her best place that she could ever imagine being. And then the Darcy family moves across the street, and you see a lot of those Aries traits start to come out in Zuri's character. That passionate nature, that confidence, that impatient, moody, direct perspective. I also really like that you got to see some of Zuri's poetry, and I feel like that connects to some of the trailblazers, the famous folks that I mentioned as part of the Aries nature. So I feel like that could be a really good pick for you. Next up, we have Phoenix Unbound by Grace Draven. So again, some of this is coming from like that fire sign moment, but I think the characters have a lot of those shared traits. So in this world, there's a ritual where women are sent to kind of be burned at the stake in the middle of like gladiatorial combat. And our main character, Ghislaine, is sent to be burned, but she ends up escaping with the help of the Empire's most famous gladiator, and it's really their journey together and their romance, but it's a very slow burn. Both of them are like really stubborn, confident, courageous people who have a good sense of right and wrong, and they also have trauma in very different ways. You get both of their perspectives. So I think it's like one of Grace Draven's best books that I've read so far, and it's just like, I love it so much. I hope you also love it. And then I haven't read this one in a while, but this one definitely came up when I was thinking about unique perspectives and trailblazer characters and people that were just unapologetically themselves, come what may, which I feel like is a very Aries headspace or trait, and that is Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. I feel like in many ways this book is about how other people see you versus how you feel. You're in this book from the perspective of a young woman who's like looking at her mom essentially, and her mom is often perceived as really impatient, moody, like confident, bordering on arrogant. So you see the daughter witness her mother, Bernadette, as this like formerly up-and-coming architect who kind of disappeared into her motherhood. And then now that her kid is a little bit older and a little bit more her own person, Bernadette really starts to push against those boundaries that she set up for herself. And it's kind of you discovering Bernadette's story through other people like her daughter. Again, I'm hoping I actually summarized that correctly because it's been a minute since I've read it, but it was a really interesting book and really kind of captured a lot of that spirit that I think you Aries folks might connect with. And the last of my recs that I have actually read is a book that I finished in March, and it was amazing. Again, I really feel like characters stood out to me more than anything else when I was coming up with this list this time around, and that is An Extraordinary Union by Alyssa Cole. Our main character, Elle, is a freed slave woman who goes back undercover as a slave to the South to try to discover these secrets that she can pass on to the North to help them win the Civil War. Her romantic interest in this, Malcolm, who you also get his perspective in this book, he is posing as a Confederate soldier to do the same thing, and they have to collaborate. It's a really compelling romance. I would call this, I think I called this in another video, a distrust to lust situation, where there's like a really strong burning passion between them right away, but she doesn't trust him for a whole bunch of very valid reasons. And so it's about kind of like their emotional journey as well as the intense sexual tension that's between them. I feel like Elle and Malcolm both as characters really fit some of those Aries traits, the confidence, the courageousness, the passion, as well as the impatience and the direct nature. Elle in particular is very direct. And I just thought this was such a dynamic romance novel, one of my favorites that I've read so far this year. And I really hope that you give it a chance and that you like it too. All right, so those are all the books that I've actually read, but let's get into some of the books that are just on my radar. Now, all of these books were released between March 20th and April 19th. Aries season, so maybe, just maybe, there will be some good things in there for you. The first is already out, and that is the final revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. This book is so high on my radar. If you loved Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I think this one would probably be a really good fit for you because it's that same kind of behind the music-esque story, although set in a totally different time period and with some BIPOC main characters. That came out on March 30th. I can't remember if I already mentioned that or not, but I'm definitely picking that one up since I can buy books this month. That one has been so much on my radar, and the cover's really cool and graphic. I'll include that here if you haven't already. So it's also in y'all's power color of red, a nice red orange here. I think it's really going to hit on, again, that like trailblazer, the musicality of some of your famous fellow Aries. I think this might fit for you. Another book that I'd like to recommend to you, or at least it's on my radar, so let's hope it's good, is Pieces by Helen Oyemi. This came out on April 6th, so you can already get your hands on it. I think of Helen Oyemi as a writer who is really unique and takes these little twists and turns with magical realism to give her characters a whole new world to play around in. You see that, I think, again, with like that trailblazer, that unique mindset, that like pushing boundaries, like not totally comfortable with the norms. So I don't know a ton about this book, but I know of Helen Oyemi, and I just am really intrigued to see what she does next. So I think this one could be worth checking out. And you know, I gotta look at what's out in romance too, because I just love a good romance. And the one that caught my eye during this time period was To Love and to Loathe by Martha Waters. It's already out, April 6th, again, very popular date for releases. Technically, this is a sequel or one of those like series where you can read them as standalones. But what I liked about this premise, specifically for Aries folks, was that it featured some main characters who were very direct, very much going their own way, and they seemed like very confident people, and that they, as individuals, kind of butt heads because of that. And one of our main characters is actually, I believe, a widower. So she's been enjoying her freedom in the Regency society, but ends up constantly butting heads with our main character. And of course, that means they're going to fall in love, right? So there just sounds like there's a lot of little good bits sprinkled in that I think would appeal to a romance reader, but also an Aries. Last but certainly not least, we have The Infinity Courts by Akemi Dawn Bowman, also out April 6th. This seems like a really original premise. I don't know too much about this book, but what I can glean from the synopsis is that it's a fantasy space about what happens after you die, and there's like a whole other world, and it sounds like it might work for your competitive nature as well as that desire to be a trailblazer, to, you know, take a totally different path to a book, because a lot of the books I've mentioned here do like these really cool, unique little twists. It's not quite a portal fantasy, but this book kind of struck me as having a unique twist as of different realms, because it's creating this new afterlife that I, at least from the description, sounds like something I've never read before. So I'm excited to check this one out. I will be definitely keeping my eye out for that paperback release. Okay, so that is my list of Aries book recommendations, some that I've read, some that I'm hoping to read, but hopefully you found something that you liked here. If you are an Aries, please let me know what some of your favorite books in the past have been, and let me know if some of these recommendations make sense. It's totally okay if they don't, too. You can tell me that down below as well. Thank you for spending time with me. I hope you've had a fantastic reading day. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more from me or this channel, and I'll see you in the next one.